I wanted to show this off. This is my grandma. She went a shopping spree when I was a little kid. That's my stop it, cricket. I don't know if I can do the video. There's a cricket. There's a cricket has interrupted the video. Quiet. The year is 1925. In Omaha, Nebraska, you've got 3 brothers and 1 cousin, and they decide they want to start their own supermarket chain. Now, they looked at a very successful chain at the time that's still around today called the Piggly Wiggly. And they said maybe the key to success is to have a silly kind of cute name. So they said, let's come up with our own. And they chose Hinky Dinky, which is actually from a World War I soldier sing-along song that is actually kind of dirty. The song is called Mademoiselle from Armentières, but most people know it from the chorus, which is Hinky Dinky Parlez-vous. If you've seen every episode of The Golden Girls, there is an episode where Estelle Getty's character hosts a rousing sing-along of this song.
Hinky Dinky Parlez-vous.
Piggly Wiggly has a mascot, Mr. Pig, but Hinky Dinky had their own spokeswoman, which was Helen Davis. Now, Helen Davis was a character, sort of like Betty Crocker. She didn't actually exist, well, sort of she existed. They hired a woman named Donna Everly of Omaha, Nebraska, to play Helen Davis. Now, Helen Davis's name is exactly the same number of letters as Hinky Dinky, and it starts with an H, and then the second name starts with a D. It's very symmetrical and lines up perfectly with Hinky Dinky, and so Donna would play this character. She would go to store openings. She answered a hotline. If you had questions about how to cook a turkey, you called Helen Davis.
Folks tell us Hinky Dinky has the best fresh fruits and vegetables in town, and mushrooms has got to be one of the reason why.
It's fresh, it's Hinky Dinky.
The Sounds of Spring for $6.98. You could get a couple Kenny Rogers albums. That's a good deal. This was not uncommon at all in the 80s. I used to go to the grocery store and they always had cassettes. They had a little area in our Acme shopping center. You would have your standard audio cassette and then it would be in this plastic casing, which was about this long. And this was to keep you from like putting it in your pocket and stealing it. So you'd have to take that thing home and you'd need like a hacksaw to cut this thing open to get your cassette. Here's an interesting thing that Hinky Dinky did. They took 2 computer terminals and they put them in one of their stores to test market in 1975. And what they wanted to do was promote banking in the store, because back then we didn't have debit cards and you certainly couldn't use your Apple Pay. And so everybody would have their checkbook, which you would open up and you'd write the amount and then you'd write your check, peel it off to them. And so they wanted a method where people could actually bank at the grocery store. And so they came up with a procedure for this. And now today, pretty much every grocery store has a small bank in it, and they certainly did in the 80s and 90s. Well, Hinky Dinky was the store that piloted that idea. At the height of Hinky Dinky, there were 50 Hinky Dinkies spread out all across the Midwest. And then as you went into the 80s and 90s, more and more of them started to close down, and they started to get absorbed into other chains. And by the year 2000, all of the Hinky Dinkies were gone. We always have some Hinky Dinky left in our hearts.
Tombstone 12-inch pizzas are 2 for $5. Hurry in to the best frozen food sale at ABCO Foods, because like snow in the desert, it won't last long. ABCO Foods, Arizona's way to save.
The year 2000 was also the same year that ABCO Foods closed down in Arizona. ABCO Foods is interesting because they were actually a spin-off of the Apha Beta grocery store chain, which was very interesting because they had a gimmick when they opened in 1917 that they put all of their groceries in alphabetical order.
Let's get to the bottom of how Apha Beta saves you money.
The savings don't stop.
Fact is, if it isn't one thing you're saving on at Apha Beta, it's another. Day in and day out, the savings just don't stop.
Apha Beta was so popular that they even launched their own line of coffee shops called Alfie's. Here's another chain some of you might remember, the Double 8 supermarket chain. This started out in 1957 as the 7-Eleven supermarket chain. Now, In 1957, the 7-Eleven convenience store chain had been around for a decade, and somehow this chain was able to use the 7-Eleven name concurrent with them until the year 2000, when they decided to change their supermarket to the Double 8 supermarket. They continued on for a few years before shutting down for good in the year 2015.
A shock and a punch in the gut to the neighborhood. The Double 8 not only put food on the table, but it provided jobs for people here in the neighborhood.
And that was a tough year for supermarkets because it was also the last year for the 95-year-old chain of Genuardi.
Why do we at Genuardi's feel so special inside? The difference is our family pride.
You got to be an old-timer to know Henke and Pillot. This is a chain that opened up in 1872, lasted for 94 years. They eventually were purchased by Kroger, and Kroger absorbed all of them and changed the name to Kroger way back in 1966. But for many, many decades, people trusted the name of Henke and Pillot. There's a chain, Colonial Stores. This started right around 1900 and expanded and expanded. At their peak, they had 500 Colonial Store locations all the way north to Maryland and all the way south to Florida and Georgia and Alabama. They closed down for good in 1988. If you're from the Los Angeles area, you might remember Fazio's shopping bag. They started out as a single store on Wilshire Boulevard. They opened in 1930, and by the 50s, they went public. But their success only lasted a couple decades, and in 1978, Fazio's shopping bag sold out to Albertsons.
I've been coming to Jitney since I was probably 5 years old.
And at Jitney, shopping just got better.
Produce is much better here at Jitney. Well, the service is getting better all the time.
Here's another chain with a wacky name, Jitney Jungle. They started in 1919 in Jackson, Mississippi. They were one of the largest grocery store chains in the world when they were acquired by Winn-Dixie. Here's an interesting thing about Jitney Jungle. Piggly Wiggly took them to court because they said that their type of store, cash and carry type of grocery store, was unique and stolen from Piggly Wiggly. Now, if you go to any supermarket today, they all kind of look the same. But at this point in time, this was a novel concept, and Piggly Wiggly felt that they had invented this. So they fought Jitney Jungle all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of Jitney Jungle. They said that Piggly Wiggly could not copyright that type of a store.
RB rice sausage, $1.37, and stovetop stuffing mix, 77 cents. You get the best of everything at Dahl.
This was in Des Moines, Iowa. They opened in 1931. They hung on until 2015.
One supermarket is better than the rest. Farmer Jack.
Here's a once beloved chain, Farmer Jack of Detroit, Michigan. They opened over 100 stores, but they maintained just that one area. And Farmer Jack stores were one of the best grocery stores you could go to. They eventually were purchased by the A&P, and A&P closed them all down in 2007. Speaking of the A&P, the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company, this is one of the oldest companies that ever existed. They were quite the American institution. They started operating grocery stores back in 1859. And listen to this, from 1915 to 1975, they were the biggest grocery store of them all. And until 1965, they were the second largest retailer of any kind. I'm assuming it was Sears that was ahead of them. Amazingly, in the year 2015, the unthinkable happened and the A&P stores shut down. And I always tell this to people when they say, oh, Amazon could never go out of business or Disney could never go out of business. There was a time where we thought the A&P couldn't go out of business. There was a time where we thought Kmart couldn't go out of business. There was a time where we thought the shopping malls were going to be around forever. It was unimaginable 20 years ago to think that shopping malls would be in the state they are in today. Let me give a shout out to everybody on Patreon. You got Chris, Cheese God, Awkward But Awesome, Michael and Jessica, and Matthew David Chapin. If you want to join for just $3 a month, I'll send you a postcard in the mail. Let me see what Hinky Dinky items I can get on eBay right now. Ooh, look, a misprint matchbook. That's pretty cool. So somebody screwed up 100 years ago and, Joe, you didn't line up the press. These matches are terrible. Oh my God, people going to be laughing about this in the year 2024. Yeah, that's what the matches should look like. We got lots of different ones. I like this logo the best. That's pretty cool. Oh, this is neat. A Hinky Dinky sewing kit. You got all your sewing supplies there. Here's that song, Hinky Dinky Parlez-vous. Look at this. AMP branded Spanish peanuts. That's pretty great. Oh, look. Come on. Look at this. See, this is what I need. This is why I got to tell you, tell a friend about this channel, because if we can get the numbers up on this, when I do a video about the AMP, I could be wearing this vest. Oh, look at this ShopRite. ShopRite's still around, but man, that is such a great logo. Yeah, look at this. Look at that. That is awesome. That is just such an era. All right. Well, this has been a fun stroll down memory lane, looking at some grocery stores, dealing with a cricket. Cricket's been quiet now, so we're good. He went to bed. Hey, in a moment, a couple boxes are going to pop up. And on this side will be the one that YouTube says is best for you. They serve it up, you eat it. Otherwise, I say you go this way. This is the history of the dinosaur chicken nuggets. I dug all the way into it. You don't know the history of it unless you watch that. So go ahead and check that out. There is a second channel. You're watching this channel, and I'll see you next time.